We are reading the book of Genesis during these weeks in our Torah reading, and the book of Genesis is about how one generation passes along wisdom to another. It reminds me of an episode in my life that I recorded in my book, Facing Illness, Finding God, and it's in a segment entitled Learning to Listen. I would like to share part of it with you now in that spirit. Once I was serving as a chaplain in a hospital. Felt very unsure of myself and very awkward, and sometimes I would rush in and rush out. But one day I met George. George was a war veteran, and he loved to tell stories of his time in the United States Navy. Often during his stay in the hospital, his mind would wander to his younger days in the service. He told me that he often felt that his current sick body in the cardiology wing was not the real him, but rather he was really still a young soldier at sea. I imagine that sometimes George looked in the mirror and was startled not to see a young soldier, but an old man. What I also discovered during my one visit with him was that he was also a poet. He had loved to write poems, and his whole life he had loved to write poems his whole life, and had kept notebooks of his poems in his attic. Unfortunately, somehow during the move from his house to the assisted living facility, all of his notebooks had been accidentally thrown away. He lost a lifetime of his writing. It was not just that he had lost his health and his familiar surroundings. It was also the legacy of his poems that he mourned. George, however, had a very good memory. When I asked him if he could recall any of his poems, he was able to recite one, and I quickly wrote it down. I'd like to offer it to you now. The addled thoughts of an old combat man. I'm sitting alone on the deck of this ship, just watching the sea and the spray. There are clouds in the sky, Mom is alive, and I'm 27 today. I see the smoke from the beaches, and the tracers that light up the sky. I hear the whine and the noise and the roar of the planes going by. How long have I been here? I don't know. There are still certain things hard to find. And the things that I see most clearly, they tell me they are all in my mind. They say that I'm old. They say that I'm sick. They're coming to take me away. They don't really know that Mom is alive, and I'm 27 today. In George's mind in the hospital, he was not really an old man, forced from his home, taking medicine for heart disease. Instead, it was his 27th birthday, and he was in the Navy on a ship, anticipating a letter from his mother. And if I had not been fortunate enough, for some inexplicable reason, to be able to slow down, pay attention, and listen, then George's last poem would have been lost forever. I consider myself lucky for having been able to pay attention and listen that day. And I also believe that God, the great listener, heard George's poem too. Let us think of our own Genesis and our own wisdom being passed from generation to generation.
Long